Hi everyone, Sean here with North Florida Saltwater Fishing. Today's video is going to be a review of the MotorGuide Xi5 24 volt 80 pound thrust trolling motor. If you guys watched my walkthrough video when I first purchased my Carolina skiff, you'll remember that my trolling motor of choice would have been the Minn Kota. That's what was in my old boat, and loved the trolling motor, loved it. The only reason that I chose the MotorGuide over the Minn Kota when it was time to rig the boat was there were no Minn Kotas to be had, and I wanted the boat rigged as soon as possible. I have a very limited schedule in which to fish, and I was impatient. But a selling point to the MotorGuide over the Minn Kota was that it integrates with my Simrad Go 9 display here. So in addition to the remote, I'm supposed to be able to operate the trolling motor, go to waypoints, etc., all from the Simrad as well. So I figured, let's give MotorGuide a try. I went online with a lot of reviews. When you look, you have boat reviews, motor reviews, trolling motor reviews, you look for reviews, it seems like what you find, 90% of them are either from the manufacturer, some magazine that's endorsing the product, or someone selling the product. So it's not really a review, they're more like endorsements. So that's why I wanted to make these series of reviews, you know, on the boat, the motor, all the different accessories I had rigged out on the boat, because I want to put out a real review, you know, something that an owner has, and that way if the next guy looking for his boat to be rigged out, you know, he can take a little bit of what I went through and do his own research and hopefully make a, you know, an educated decision on how he wants to outfit his boat. So in addition to the review and going over the MotorGuide, I'm going to do a comparison of my experience so far. I think I've been out in the boat 4 times with it. That's not a lot, but there's been some things happen that I think I can start to give a review on it and compare it with the Minn Kota and the experience I had with it. We're going to go with the remote control, the ease of deploy and retrieve, holding power, which is very important, because the biggest reason I got a trolling motor, I'm not a bass fisherman, I 100% saltwater fish. So holding power for me is the anchor lock feature on both motors. That's the biggest thing for me. The reliability of the motor, the technology available with both motors, price, and then I'll wrap it up with an overall thought on the comparison of the MotorGuide and the Minn Kota. First, let's try to make apples apples, okay? My previous boat was a Palm Beach 161 Whitecap. It had a 50 horse 2-stroke on it. This Carolina skiff 162 JLS has a 90 horsepower 4-stroke, and it's a full liner boat. So this boat is quite a bit heavier than the Palm Beach, although there's only about 5 inches difference in the length, overall length. So there's a 10-pound difference between my Minn Kota, which was a 70-pound thrust, and the MotorGuide, which is an 80-pound thrust. It's pretty comparable because, like I said, my previous boat was quite a bit lighter than this one. So with that being said, let's go into the remote control. Let's talk about that. On its face, just picking them up, I automatically prefer the Minn Kota remote because it has an LED screen or LCD, whatever, screen on it. And I can tell at what power setting my motor's at when I have my spot lock on and it's fighting the tide. I can take a quick glance at it. I can see how hard my motor's working and kind of give myself an indication of, okay, you know, maybe I need to give the motor a break or what have you, okay? With the MotorGuide, you just have buttons, plus or minus. There's nothing telling you at what setting your motor's at. You kind of gotta listen for it, you know, the hum of the motor or what have you, to kind of guess where you're at as far as how hard the motor's working. That being said, and you know, I'll go into holding power a little later, I've had zero problems while the motor's running of the MotorGuide holding position. And we'll show some video of water rushing by the boat on an outgoing tide and the MotorGuide holding rock steady. However, on the remote control, the features of the remote, I just prefer the Minn Kota. I do enjoy being able to jog my position 5 feet one way or the other with each tap on the MotorGuide remote, but I just prefer the amount of information I get from the Minn Kota over the MotorGuide. So in the battle of remotes, 100% I prefer what I had with the Minn Kota over what the MotorGuide offers. Deploy and retrieve. Both motors are pretty easy to deploy and retrieve. As far as ease, the ergonomics of, you know, how hard do I have to work to get the motor in and up and down, the MotorGuide is actually easier, a lot easier. My wife can go to the bow of the boat. She handles it no problem. The MotorGuide has two different areas that, you know, one, you push down a clamp to release it, to deploy it. And then there's a very small latch on the back you have to depress in order to retrieve it. On the MotorGuide, it's one big latch. You just press down on it, deploy it, press down on it, retrieve it. Real easy, real simple. So as far as the ease of being able to deploy and retrieve the motor, the nod goes to the MotorGuide. Holding power. That's one of the most important features on a trolling motor with me because of the way I use it. Whether it's going to be offshore over an inshore wreck or at the jetties. Biggest thing at the jetties, because St. Augustine Inlet, when the tide's running, it can run. I mean, it's like someone pulled the stopper out of a bathtub. It can run. With the MotorGuide, it holds solid. I mean, when that motor's operating and everything's doing what it's supposed to do, it doesn't go anywhere. I haven't had to worry about backing down on somebody's boat or it slipping or what have you. The Minn Kota, when I was on my old boat, every now and again, the tide could overpower the motor. And it seems weird to me that only 10 pounds of thrust could make that much of a difference, considering that the Palm Beach, my old boat, was quite a bit lighter boat than this is. But maybe 10 pounds makes that much difference. But as far as holding power, the nod goes to the MotorGuide. Reliability. The Minn Kota, I think I had that motor for 3 years. And in 3 years, I think it actually lost its GPS signal and, you know, quit holding where it was supposed to hold maybe 2 to 3 times over 3 years. I was incredibly confident anytime I dropped that motor. No problems at all. With the MotorGuide, I've had a couple issues. You'll see in this video where all of a sudden my wife says, "Hey, we're moving." And yeah, we were. And it's a little, you know, you get caught up, and you should always be aware of whether you're physically anchored or using a trolling motor with a spotlight feature. Be aware where you're at, especially around jetty rocks and with the kind of current that you can encounter. But when you're fighting a fish, you're fighting a fish. And if I'm going to net her fish and she's fighting the fish, we're both concentrating on that. And during that time, the MotorGuide just decided to stop holding us. We look up and we're drifting towards the rocks. So you'll see a break in the video, and that's me trying to get this trolling motor, you know, back on track.
Good job. Appreciate you.
Like we're getting closer.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing ain't holding. Hold on. GoPro, start recording. Good. All right, a little bit of a deal there. The trolling motor quit holding, so took us a minute to get the fish. He's a pretty guy, but he's going back. Now we got to see what we got going on with the trolling motor. Oh.
Again, when it's holding, it holds rock steady. But there's been 3 occasions on 3 trips where this motor's just beep, turned off. Or it's kind of lost its mind and started rotating back and forth, and it's usually when you're wind against the tide, it starts doing this deal where it's confused. You turn it off, turn it on, it catches back up, and I may not have a problem the rest of the day. So maybe that's coincidence. Maybe I've just had a little run of bad luck with it and it'll iron itself out over time. We'll see. This video, as with all the other reviews I'm going to do, these are fairly fresh as far as when I obtained the boat, the different items, you know, that the boat was rigged out with. So it's a fairly fresh review. I'm going to revisit all of these at 6 months and at a year. See if my mind's changed. You know, see if things have gotten better, gotten worse. You know, I think the experience is, especially with what these things cost these days, it's important that they hold their own, you know, throughout time. The Minn Kota, like I said, from a confidence issue, I just felt more confident when I dropped that motor than when I dropped the MotorGuide so far. I hope that changes. There was one issue with reliability as far as the retrieving the MotorGuide. We hit the big lever, tried to pull it up, wouldn't come unlocked. And we're at the jetty rocks, we're trying to, you know, one person's on the big motor keeping us off the rocks while we're trying to pull the trolling motor up. It was just a big hassle. Turned out there's a cable that has 2 cables on each side of its locking pin in the mount. One of those came loose. And this is the 2nd time I used the trolling motor. To Whalen Base credit, I took it up there. They found the problem, fixed the problem, and I haven't had an issue with it since. But 2nd time with the trolling motor, and all of a sudden I can't get it up and I'm by the rocks. That didn't bode well. The only time that the Minn Kota where I've ever had a problem with retrieving the motor was not the motor's fault. We were fishing the jetties. We were just having to horse fish in to try to get them past the sharks. The sharks were ridiculous that day. And I don't mean little black tips. I'm talking about big bull sharks. You know, probably 5-6 foot bull sharks. And my wife had just pulled a fish overboard, and she was at the stern of the boat. And she just got it in as the shark boils. And I don't know if the shark was ticked off or what have you, but he turns and just slams into the trolling motor. I mean, it shook the boat. And after that, I didn't think anything of it till we went to pull the motor up and the motor wouldn't come up. Well, the reason being, the shark hit the motor so hard, he bent this stainless steel locking pin. And the force necessary to do that, you gotta be kidding me. But replaced the locking pin, trolling motor great. It didn't damage the shaft didn't bend, prop didn't break. I mean, I can't fault the Minn Kota for that. So, in terms of reliability, I'm gonna have to give the nod again to the Minn Kota. Technology. The power drive, 70 pound, 24 volt. I didn't have the GPS disc. I didn't have it. Although I did have a Humminbird depth sounder, I didn't have the 2 integrated. So I didn't take advantage of the technology that was available, all the technology that was available with the Minn Kota. With the MotorGuide, I do like the jog feature in the remote. I don't have to put a separate puck. It's all self-contained. I do like that about the MotorGuide. What is very disappointing was one of the selling points to the MotorGuide was its integration with the Simrad. And I'm just going to simply say it doesn't work. It's sometimes I can get it to lock, Sometimes I can't. I mean, it's got a mind of its own. With the remote, it's no problem. No problem at all with the remote. But you do pay extra to have those two integrated. And, you know, I'll go into some other details of, you know, my interaction with the dealership over that when I do the review on Whalen Bay. But to sell that as a selling point, it doesn't work very well. It just doesn't. Had I known how bad it works or doesn't work, I'd have saved myself some money. And I would have been fine with just the remote. I mean, it's a 16-foot boat. It's not like I'm walking a 30-foot boat back and forth. I mean, if I have to, you know, walk up to the motor or walk to a remote, it's not that big of a deal. So in hindsight, the selling point of the integrating the trolling motor with the Simrad, zero. Yeah. So technology, I'm going to call it a wash because I don't know about the Minn Kota because I didn't take advantage of it at the time. But the MotorGuide's technology, for all its advertised greatness, is zero. Price. Well, MotorGuide across the board is slightly less expensive than the Minn Kota. I believe the difference in price with the current model Minn Kota that would have went on this boat, and I think is the Tarova. I think the MotorGuide's $150 less, somewhere around that approximately. To have the better remote with more information in my hands and the history that I had with the other Minn Kota, I would have gladly paid the extra $150. Gladly. I wouldn't have worried about integration with the Simrad, any of that. I would have. As things stand now, and we're just going to flow right into my overall opinion of how this went. At this point, I wish I'd have got a Minn Kota. The MotorGuide works well. It holds rock solid when it's working. The remote, sorry, we have a plane flying over. The MotorGuide holds rock solid when it's working. Holds probably in a strong current, holds better than the Minn Kota did. I'm sorry, yeah, the Minn Kota holds better than the Minn Kota did. But all the Minn Kota really did is it would start, you know, walking back. It didn't just shut off and let me drift towards the rocks, which that's happened a couple of times with this MotorGuide. A little unsettling. Again, been at it 3 or 4 times. Maybe I just run into some rough luck with it. Maybe that'll all even out. Again, we'll revisit this in 6 months and see if it's changed my mind. If anyone from MotorGuide is watching, or any of you guys are watching and you know something about the integration between the Simrad and the MotorGuide that I don't know about, maybe I'm doing something wrong where I'm having this bad experience of it literally being worthless, you know, leave a comment. I mean, I'll be glad. I mean, I'm always learning, and I would love for it to work. So if someone can tell me what I'm missing, that'd be great. Whalen Bay couldn't tell me. Their reaction was, oh yeah, you know, there's a delay and it doesn't work that well. I'm like, well, that'd have been nice to know before I spent the extra money to have that integrated. But again, we'll go into that later. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me, you know, for the almost 20 minutes this video's taken. I know I can get a little long-winded. I hope it helps if you're trying to decide whether you want a Minn Kota or MotorGuide for a smaller boat like this. My recommendation would be wait on Minn Kota to build some motors, because in my opinion at this point, the Minn Kota is a better motor. You know, and I own a MotorGuide, so it's about as honest as it gets. I'm not so dissatisfied with the MotorGuide that I want to rip it off and get a Minn Kota. No, we're gonna let this thing run its course. If it ever gets to that, I'll certainly put out a video relaying that information. But it's not quite to that level. It's not a terrible motor. Like I said, holding power, fantastic. Reliability, not so much. Remote control, wish it had a screen. Integration with my Simrad, worthless. That's my review, honest as it can get. If you like the video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys subscribe and share it with your friends. You know, I'm trying to build the channel, but I'm building it for you guys. So leave me some comments, leave me some suggestions. I read them all and will respond to them all. And again, I appreciate you guys for watching. Until next time, tight lines and screaming drags. See you on the water.
Thank you so much for allowing us to share our experiences with you. We really hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to and sharing our channel with your friends. Also, please leave a comment or suggestion. Your input is very important. We will answer every comment. Until next time, tight lines and screaming drags.